Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ellie. Today I'm going to be doing my July reading wrap up. This month I was debating on how to do this because I read 26 books and not all of them were hits, so I was debating on whether just talking about the ones that I really enjoyed, but I think I'm going to try and do just a really quick fire of all of the books. Just because I didn't enjoy a book doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to really enjoy that book, so I do like to talk about all of the books that I read in a reading wrap up, just in case something that makes me not like a book is something that really will make you like a book, if that makes sense. So I think I managed to read so much this month because I tried to swap my screen time for reading time and it definitely worked. I found myself in some cases able to read a book a day, but as I said, not a lot of the books I read were hits this month, so I don't know if that affected it because I was reading so much. So I think for August I am gonna look at my shelves and pick off all of the books that have been on my TBR for a while that I think are going to be 5-star reads and try and read more quality over quantity this month. Okay, so the first book I read this month was called Xavier by Gia Bailey. This was on Kindle Unlimited and I read this because I was very close to completing reading a book for every letter of the alphabet and I only had 2 letters left, so the first 2 books I read this month were for those letters so I could complete that challenge. So this was a novella. It's an age gap romance between Lily and Xavier. Xavier is a billionaire who lives in this house alone and Lily's mum has been like his housekeeper for quite a while, and Lily comes back from Paris where she had been living. I think her mum has an operation or she's ill or something, so Lily comes to take over from her mum's job while she recovers, and of course that's how she meets Xavier. Xavier's always really kept himself to himself, but he finds himself drawn to Lily. It was a very insta love novella, but I would definitely recommend it, and I gave this one 3 stars. Then I read Veiled. I'm not too sure how you pronounce this author's surname, but their first name is Michelle. Again, I just read this one to tick off the letter V on my challenge. This one, unfortunately, I only gave 2.75 stars, when I think this was probably the lowest rated book that I read this month. Basically one of those typical Supernatural Academy books. However, in this one we follow Audrey and she wants to go to this performing arts school, but it's very prestigious to get into, and somehow her dad manages to get her into this academy. She's really excited, but she turns up there, she's dropped off, and she realizes her dad has enrolled her in the wrong school, and instead of being at this performing arts school, she's at this vampire academy. You know, the premise sounded like something that I was really gonna enjoy. This wasn't a necessarily long book, but with hardly any interaction between the main characters and other characters, she already had 2 guys that were like falling for her, which I personally just found a little bit unbelievable. Like, it was a little bit too much insta love for me. And the other thing I noticed, this was on Kindle Unlimited and there were quite a lot of like spelling and grammar mistakes within this, and there was also an entire chapter where the character's name was Aubrey, but for the rest of the book her name was Audrey. I was very tempted to DNF at that point, but I was about 70% in, so I thought I would just continue with it. But I think those kinds of things just really brought down that rating for me. But if you love insta love Supernatural Academies, then I think you would definitely like this book. Just be aware that there are typos and some mistakes in it. So I thought that was my lowest rated book this month, but looking at my document I actually rated the next book I read 2.75 stars as well, and that one was By Midnight by Mia James. This is a young adult romance. In this one we follow April. She is forced to move from Edinburgh down to London due to her dad's job. She's really not happy about it, and she is enrolled in Ravenswood, which is a school for all of these really rich kids, but it turns out that it's not all as it seems. Then people who live in the area start to be murdered, and there are rumours that vampires are behind these killings. The main reason I wasn't a particular fan of this one was just because I didn't particularly like the main character of this one. I probably should have again just DNF, because I've been trying so hard to get into the habit of DNFing books I'm just not enjoying, but I kept going with this one, and it was another very similar thing which I find in quite a lot of YA now I'm older. It didn't bother me so much back when I was a teenager reading this, but now as I'm older reading back on YA, it was the very typical all of the boys are in love with her kind of thing. And the timelines of this book was over 400 pages, but the whole story was told over 2 weeks, and it was just kind of unrealistic that the amount of stuff that happened in this book would have actually happened over 2 weeks. Yeah, I mean, it was okay, it just wasn't really the story that I thought it was going to be. Then I read Zodiac Academy book 8.5 Beyond the Veil by Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti. I've said a million times in every single video I post, Zodiac Academy is my favourite series. This book, I didn't enjoy it. In this one we follow characters who have passed away or have been mentioned as being dead throughout the whole series, and this is them watching over what's happening in the world, and the events of book 8 are kind of retold in this, but from the people who are watching them's point of view. And honestly, I didn't really care for many of the characters within this. The authors were saying that this was going to give away some hints for book 9, but honestly, maybe it went completely over my head, but I didn't find any hints towards how book 9's gonna go. And I'm really sad because I love this series so much. Just this one, I was just kind of bored with it, and it's quite a long book to be bored with, but because I'm such a fan and because book 9's coming out, I told myself I have to finish this, and I'm going to try and do a reread of the whole series before book 9 comes out, because we don't yet have a release date, but I'm honestly probably not even going to reread this one. I was a little disappointed with this one. I felt it wasn't really needed, but then by the time book 9 comes out, I might read that and think, oh, that's why that was mentioned in this book. So we'll see. It might all connect. Just felt a little bit unneeded, and some of the scenes in here from some of the characters just didn't really add to the story at all, and I don't know why they were needed. But then I picked up Priest by Sarah Simone, and I literally read this in a sitting. I really enjoyed this, and I feel like it's weird to say that I enjoyed this because of the subject of this story, but I was hooked on it. In this we follow Tyler and Poppy. Tyler is a priest. Poppy moves in nearby and starts showing up at his church. They first meet when she comes to like this confessional booth, and she wants to confess to him, and he is initially attracted to her voice, and he takes a peek at her, which he knows he shouldn't have done, and from there he is attracted to her, and he is very conflicted because his feelings are obviously going against everything that he believes in with him being a priest. And yeah, I was just very nervous going into this because of the setting and the contents of it, but I did really enjoy it. This might have been my favourite book that I read this month, and I'm really excited to continue on with the others in the series. Then I read Falling from Gravity by KK Allen. This was like a novella prequel which sets up the next book in the series, but in this one we follow Amelia and Tobias. Tobias is Amelia's best friend, older brother, and I can't quite remember the circumstances around it, but they end up going on like this week-long camping trip. I think their families are all away on vacation or something, and they are left behind, so they go off on this camping trip together. And Amelia and Tobias's full-length novel is called Defying Gravity, so I will probably pick that up at some point in the future. Then I picked up Guild by Raven Kennedy. We follow Oren, I think that's how you say her name, but she has golden skin and she lives in a golden cage in this castle which is ruled by King Midas, and they have this relationship where he found her on the streets when they were younger, and he's kind of built up this life. He got into this palace and married a princess so that he could become king. Oren has always been in love with him and looked up to him, and he has given her this cage to live in, and he tells her it's like for her own protection because she's his favourite. And there are these people in there. This did make me feel like a little bit uncomfortable, but they're called saddles, and they are basically there for the king and any men who are high up in society to do as they wish with these women. And there are some men doing it as well, but it's mostly women. And there is a threat of war, so King Midas hands over Oren to this other rival kingdom, and she is like completely shocked and completely heartbroken as how he could do this to her. And towards the end of this book they start off on this journey and they are attacked by these pirates. That's kind of where this book ends and the story develops. So then later on in the month I then picked up Glint, which is book 2, and I enjoyed this one a lot more than I did Guild. And again, I feel like I can't really talk too much about this one without giving away sort of the ending of such of this one. But after I finished this I really wanted to pick up book 3, but book 3 is quite hefty. Like the books appear to get longer as they go on, so I'm definitely going to pick up book 3 in August. It's like another one of those series that I've had on my shelves for ages, and then when I finally pick it up I fall in love and can't work out why I left them so long to read. But it's a very hyped romance. I saw a lot of hype of this on TikTok and I would say it's worth it. Then I picked up Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. So again, I've said many times Tessa Bailey is quite a hit or miss author for me, and I read Secretly Yours think it might have been last month, maybe the month before, and I absolutely loved it, and it was my favourite book by Tessa Bailey. So when this one came out, which is book 2 in the same series, I picked it up straight away, and unfortunately I just didn't really enjoy this one either. I think now I'm probably not going to read any more Tessa Bailey. I've had one that I've loved, one that was okay, and I think the other 3 or 4 that I've read I've just not really enjoyed. So I just don't think Tessa Bailey is an author for me, which is sad to say because I know she's really hyped and loved, but I don't know, there's just something about her books that I just don't personally enjoy. So this one, we follow Natalie, who is our hero from book 1's sister. She has lost her job and has come back to her hometown, and she wants her trust fund so she can set up her own business with her friend, but her father has put in a clause that she can't get her trust fund unless she is employed and married, and she is neither. So she strikes up a deal with another guy in the town who owns another local winery, and this is like a enemies to lovers, hate to love kind of thing, but they both agree for a mutual benefit because he also needs a loan to carry on with his winery, and her name will insure him the loan essentially. So it's a marriage of convenience so that they can get to their loans and their trust funds, but of course they end up catching feelings along the way. Marriage of convenience is my least favourite trope, so with an author that isn't always a hit for me, I probably should have just skipped this book completely. It was just because I loved the first one in this series so much. I was really hoping I was going to love this too. I just didn't really like the character of Natalie that much. I couldn't really relate to her. I think I gave this a 3 stars overall. Then I read Two Wrongs Make a Right by Chloe Leese. Again, this is another really popular author, and I've never actually read anything by them, so I picked this one up when I found it in the works. The cover drew it to me. I love the heroine's tattoos, but this is a Much Ado About Nothing retelling, which I did not realise until I was like halfway through the book. In this one we follow Bea and Jamie. This is a fake dating where their friends and family think that they would be absolutely perfect together, so they keep trying to put them both in situations where they are going to be forced together to try and force these feelings on both of them. So they decide to kind of call their bluff and fake date and try and convince all of their friends and family that their plan worked when really it didn't. So they set this deadline, and then I think it was like Thanksgiving, and then they were like, at Thanksgiving they're gonna admit to everyone that actually they were playing them, but they end up obviously falling in love. I thought this was really sweet, and I definitely want to pick up more by this author. Then I picked up Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco. Again, this is another series where I owned the whole series and they'd just been on my shelves for too long, so I decided to pick it up. Again, really love this one. It was really hyped, and I'm definitely going to get to book 2 in August. So in this one we start this book with Amelia and Vittoria, who are sisters and they are witches, and this is set in Italy I believe, and witches were cast out, so the ones that are left keep their magic under wraps, and they're all very secretive, and they don't interact with people, so they don't raise suspicion at the fact that they can still do magic. Then one night Amelia discovers her sister dead, and she needs to find out what happened to her, and if that means digging into the dark magic, which she has always been very against, then she will do whatever it takes to find out what happened to her sister, get revenge on whoever did this to her. This is when she meets Wrath, who is one of the wicked, and she accidentally summons him. I can't remember the exact thing, but she had to like agree to something so that he could go back to where he came from, but until she agreed to that he had to follow her and protect her. You slowly start to meet more of the wicked as they all try and bargain Amelia to join them, and I don't know where this story is gonna go. I am really excited for book 2, and I wasn't planning on reading this one this month, but I read The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, so I've been wanting to try and read some more classics, and I picked this one up in the charity shop a while ago. I'd never seen the movies or read this at all, like at school or anything, and it just really intrigued me, and I downloaded Fable and I joined Ruby Granger's book club on there, and this was the pick for the month, and I already owned a copy, so I thought I would read it myself. I actually ended up downloading the audio for this on Audible and listening to it as well as reading it, and it wasn't quite what I expected or what I thought it was going to be, but I actually really liked it, and now I want to sit and watch the movie. I don't really know how to explain this one, but we have Gatsby and he has this mansion and he holds like these huge parties. All of these rich and well-known people come, and I thought this was told from the perspective of Gatsby, but it's not. It's told from his neighbour's point of view, who ends up like wound up in his life, and I was really intrigued by it. It's not very long, and if you haven't read it, I would recommend picking it up. Then I read Only One Regret by Natasha Madison. This is a single dad, friends to lovers romance. This one, it took me quite a while to get through within the month because there wasn't really that much plot to it. They were insanely happy the whole way through, and then there was a third act breakup which was resolved in like 2 pages. And if you're looking for just like a sweet, happy romance, if you're in that kind of mood, then I would recommend this. But if you're looking for something with a bit more angst or drama, then this probably isn't the one for you. I read some of the reviews for this on Goodreads after I finished it, and a lot of people were saying that this author's stories all seem to be very, very similar. So I've never actually read anything by this author, so I can't agree to that or disagree to that. But yeah, not a lot really happened in it, but it was kind of cute. I can't remember the characters' names, but so the single dad, he was I think he was a hockey player. It was either hockey or football, and he has just been through a divorce and he has 2 daughters. It's like his agent, but they're also like best friends, so it got like a bit confusing at times because I couldn't really work out what their relationship was to start. But she comes around and helps out with the kids. The kids absolutely love her, and these characters already have like a really well established friendship, so you don't get any of the building up of them getting to know each other. It just like seamlessly went from friends to being a couple, and yeah, there wasn't really any drama or anything too much to it. But if that's what you like, then you'll really like this one. Then I read the originals. This is the 3rd book in the books which are based off the original TV series. I've spoken about these before. I still have the same opinion. The characters in these are portrayed very differently to how they are in the show. This was the 3rd and final book. Honestly, I just read this to get it off my TBR. The Vampire Diaries is back on Netflix in the UK, and I've been watching the originals on ITV streaming service, so I wanted to pick this book up seeing as I was watching the shows as well. I definitely prefer the shows over these books, but it is fun to see different storylines with these characters within the books. Then I read another ebook. I read Hot Shot by Tegan Cade. This was another sports romance. We have basketballer Phoenix, and he has completely fallen out of love with the sport. I don't think he ever actually really had a love for the sport. He was just kind of doing it because his father wanted him to do it, and he's going to this college for sports professionals, and he has a crush on Heather, who works in the kitchen at the school. She has a real passion for food. She has quite a troubled past, and she is working to try and raise money to save the soup kitchen, which she volunteers at because that soup kitchen had helped her out in the past. One night she is walking, I think she just finished work, and she's walking across campus and she gets mugged, and he is there, and he tries to run after the guy to get her things back, but she's just like, no, let him go, it's fine. And he gives her a lift back to her house, and she shows him her love and passion for food and cooking. And from this, he then finds himself a potential new passion, and he starts to question, what does he really want, and should he take the basketball route because that's what his family want? He's really good at it, he's going to have a good life if he follows that, but he's not going to be happy. Or does he follow the route of this newfound love for cooking but disappoint everyone around him? And I like this. I got through it fairly quickly, and I think again I gave this 3 stars. Then I read 3 books all from the same series. The first one is called Shade of Vampire, the second one was A Shade of Blood, and the third A Castle of Sand, and these were all by Bella Forrest. There were 7 books in this series which I did own, but after the 3rd one I DNF'd the whole series. But this is like a YA vampire romance one, and it started off well. So in Shade of Vampire, Sophia is on holiday. So her dad abandoned her with his friend, so she's grown up with Ben, who is this boy she's always had a crush on, but his parents have like raised her, and they all go on a holiday to Mexico together. And one night she decides that she's going to tell Ben how she really feels, but then he bumps into his ex-girlfriend on the beach, and he tells her that they are going to make another go of it. So that night she goes out by herself for a walk on the beach to try and clear her head, and she ends up being kidnapped, and she is taken to this other world where the vampire prince is about to awaken from a 400-year sleep, and he needs these blood slaves to feed on and do whatever he wants to. So Sophia, along with I think it was 4 or 5 other girls, were all kidnapped, and they are going to be offered to this vampire prince when he wakes up. But instead of feeding on her and using her as he wishes, he ends up taking a liking to Sophia, and he makes her his personal slave so that she won't get her by anyone else, and he immediately starts treating her better than the rest of the slaves that were given to him. So there are immediate rumours as to what's really going on between these two, and they eventually fall in love. So the next two books are following their journey. There are lots and lots of characters in this series, and it did get quite confusing. I think that's one of the reasons why I did DNF, because there was just so much going on and so many people that some of it didn't really feel necessary to the story, that it just got a little bit confusing. But sorry, I'm trying really hard to get through this because I keep having to stop because there keeps being noises and people keep coming up upstairs, and I feel like I'm not explaining these books properly because I'm trying to get through it quick. So I apologize that this is kind of a mess of a wrap up, but we are almost done. But then I read 1,000 Heartbeats by Kira Cass. In this we follow Annika and Lennox. This story is told from both of their POVs, which alternate throughout the book. So Annika is a princess who is just being put into an arranged marriage, which she agrees to, she accepts, because she's always known that she is gonna marry for her kingdom and not for love, and she thinks if she just gives into it, there is a chance that maybe one day she will fall in love with this husband that she is supposed to marry. And then we have Lennox, who lives in a rival, I don't think it was a kingdom, but it was like a rival camp, and his camp leader thinks that Annika's family stole their land and he wants to prove himself, so he volunteers to go to Annika's kingdom to kidnap or kill one of the royals so that they could take over and get their land and their kingdom back. At the very start of this, Lennox successfully gets to the kingdom and he kidnaps Annika, but she manages to escape. But before she escapes, they have this kind of like heart to heart, and they see each other in a different light when they really shouldn't, because they've both kind of done bad things for each other's kingdoms. But once Annika gets back to her kingdom, she can't help thinking of Lennox, and Lennox can't help thinking of Annika. Yeah, this was quite a long book. I think it was like 550 pages, but I did really like it. I feel like it probably could have been a bit shorter, but again, the chapters were really short, so despite the length of the book, it was easy to get through it quite quickly. Then I read Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey, and from what I said earlier about Tessa Bailey, you can probably guess what my opinion on this book was going to be. But in this one we followed Bethany and Wes. Bethany, she ventures out on her own. This is part of a series, and this is the third book, and I've not read the first two, and I feel like I wasn't missing anything out. The only thing was characters who were obviously in the first two books were mentioned and I didn't really know anything about them. But Bethany's family like flip houses and she wants to go and do it by herself. I think she normally stages the houses, but this time she wanted to do a whole flip herself. Wes works for her brother and he quits working for the brother so that he can work with her and help her on this house flip. They are at a wedding, and conveniently a TV producer overhears them arguing and decides that this would make a great TV show, watching these two siblings flip a house, and one of them would win this competition at the end, and I think they got the fees for the house or something paid for. You don't really see anything about the brothers' side of the story in how they're renovating these houses. It's only from like Bethany and Wes is like a temporary guardian of his niece because his sister has some issues and she's not in town, so he's like a single dad kind of thing, and he doesn't really know what he's doing, so occasionally Bethany will come over and help, but she doesn't know anything about kids either, so they just kind of work together on this house but also with the things that he has going on in his life. And again, I liked it. It was just, I don't think Tessa Bailey is an author for me, and I think I'm gonna stop now. I also read Atomic Habits by James Clear. This one I did not sit and read all in one go, which I usually do when reading. I read a chapter a night of this one to try and take it in. I tabbed a few bits. This was really interesting, and I do actually find myself, since I've read this, in my day-to-day life thinking about things that came up with this and trying to apply them to my everyday life. So I think this was really interesting, and I do think about it a lot. I don't really read a lot of non-fiction, and I also feel like you can't really rate non-fiction because it's just how you take it, but I really enjoyed this and I thought there were some great points made in this. Almost done. So then I picked up Zora Books Happy Ever After by Taj McCoy. This is like a love triangle. This one we follow Zora, and she owns an independent bookstore, and she has had a crush on this author Lawrence, who comes to her store to do a talk about his new release. And in the crowd she is sat next to his friend Reed, and Reed is really grumpy, and they end up, can't quite remember how it ends up, basically they all start casually dating. So the guys are best friends, they both know about it, they both agree to it, and she's just casually dating both of them. But as they're best friends, of course there is some rivalry between them to both want to be the better boyfriend to her, and she just can't really make up her mind which of the two she prefers. She'll think she's made up her mind, and then something will happen, and there are pros and cons to both of them, and with the help of her best friend and her granny, she just tries to come to the conclusion as whether she wants to continue casually dating both of them, whether she wants something serious with one of them, or maybe neither of them are the ones for her. I really liked the bookstore setting of this one, and I think she picked the right guy in the end. Then I read Full Court Press. This was a single mum romance between Kelsey and basketball star Landon. So Kelsey, she is a single mum to a 5-year-old son. Starts off that she absolutely hates the game of basketball. You do find out why within the very first chapter, but her son is obsessed, and one night her friends scores them tickets to a basketball game, so she just goes along even though she hates the game because it's a night out with her friends. And during the game, Landon ends up like tripping and he falls on her, and she is super embarrassed, and to make up for the incident, he gives her and her friends passes to this club that they go to afterwards. I was like, I'm really sorry, here's these passes. So her and her friends go to this club, and she ends up getting to know him a little better. And he wants more, and she's obviously a little guarded. She really cares about her son and always puts him first, and he fully understands that, and he knows that if he enters into anything with Kelsey, it's not just her. So he starts to come up with dates, and he always includes the son, which I thought was really sweet, and the son is definitely at the front of all of their decisions and all of their dates, and it was really sweet. I will say a lot of the drama that happens in this book is all like right at the very end, and I feel that drama could have been more spread out throughout the book instead of having all of these different drama points happen at once and then the book ending, but I still really liked it. Then I read Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I did not realise this was YA. I don't know why I didn't realise this was YA, but our main characters are 17, they turn 18 in this. In this we follow Brad and Celine. Both of their POVs are told within this story. They were best friends when they were younger, but something happens and now they absolutely hate each other. There is a survival course being held which they both apply for because the prize of completing this and getting the high score is scholarships, which they both really want. They embark on this wilderness survival camp, and because they're forced together they have to face some truths, and because they both disliked each other so much, like Celine especially has built up this picture of Brad in her head of how much she hates him and how he's this really horrible person, but as they're forced into these wilderness situations she starts to think that actually maybe he isn't as bad as she's built up in her head. It's just all this resentment that she has towards him, and the cover is so cute of this as well. And the final book that I read this month was Savage Heart by Nessa Gray. This was a dark mafia age gap romance. In this one we follow our heroine Kelly. She is 18 and her dad is a neglectful father, but he is a police officer, I think, and we have Mitra, I think that's how they said that they say his name, it's short for Dimitri, I think, and they meet at first but they don't know who the other one is, and then she comes home from school one night, I think it was, and this Mitra was in the living room with her father, and her father, to save himself, is like, you can take my daughter. So he does, he kidnaps Kelly, and it never actually says how old he is, but Kelly has a conversation with one of her friends and her friend says, how old is he? And I think she says, I think he's 27, but I don't think that's ever actually confirmed. So there's about a 9-year age gap between the two, and Kelly is immediately attracted to him, but because of the situation they're in, she keeps telling herself, why are you feeling like this? Like, he is keeping you here. But he starts to give her like some leniency as he likes what he sees too. And yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I just really liked the story. The only thing that kept it off being a 5 was because I wasn't the biggest fan of the character of Kelly, but I really liked our male main character and the story. So that was all of the books that I read. I think that took way longer than I was hoping that it was going to, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you again next week.